The morning air was cool, carrying the scent of damp asphalt and faint exhaust fumes. My heels clicked against the pavement as I walked toward my car, clutching a slim leather folder that contained everything: bank records, my late husband's will, documents for the inheritance meeting. I remember sliding into the driver's seat, adjusting the mirror. My fingers had just brushed the ignition when a sharp cry pierced the quiet. "Ma'am, don't start that car!" I jerked my head up. A man, bearded, clothes frayed, eyes wild, was rushing toward me from the corner of the lot. His hair was matted, his coat torn at the sleeves. Every instinct screamed danger. But then he shouted again, louder, words tumbling out between ragged breaths. "Your daughter-in-law, she paid me, said I'd get food if I didn't tell you." My blood froze. The key hovered in my hand, inches from the ignition. Slowly, heart hammering, I pushed the door open and stumbled out. "Wait," I whispered, my knees weak. "What are you talking about?" He pointed at the car, his voice cracking. "Check underneath, please, just check." With trembling hands, I crouched beside the bumper. And there it was, a crude device strapped to the undercarriage, wires coiled like veins. Not a figment, not a trick, a bomb. I staggered back, air caught in my throat. The man fell to his knees, palms open. I was supposed to keep quiet, but I couldn't. "I know what hunger feels like, but I'm not a murderer. She told me your car would handle the problem." The folder nearly slipped from my hands. My daughter-in-law. The same woman who had kissed my cheek at the funeral. The same one who had wept beside me, swearing we'd get through the inheritance process together. The leech. If you're watching this, drop a comment, hit like and subscribe. Because what happened that day taught me betrayal isn't always whispered in boardrooms. It sometimes lurks in your driveway. My name is Caroline. I am 65 years old. And that morning, I realized my husband's death had not ended the battle for his estate. It had merely lit the fuse. My husband Richard had been a stern but fair man. A businessman who built his fortune in shipping. He believed in legacy. When he died suddenly of a heart attack, grief wrapped me like chains. But before long, grief turned to chaos. The will reading revealed an estate worth over $20 million, and an ugly truth. My son, Jonathan, and his wife, Melissa, were desperate to control it. Jonathan was weak. A man who lived in Richard's shadow, always chasing validation he never received. Melissa, on the other hand, was sharp. Too sharp. She smiled like a saint but spoke like a serpent. She whispered that she would help Jonathan get what he deserved. And what Jonathan deserved, she believed, was everything. I was the obstacle. When the homeless man, who called himself Eddie, warned me, I knew I couldn't walk into the inheritance meeting unarmed. Not with guns, but with information. I called the police anonymously, reported a suspicious device under my car, and waited from a distance as flashing lights filled the lot. Officers swarmed, bomb squad in heavy gear dismantling the threat piece by piece. The sight left me cold, but I didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, I called my attorney, Mr. Delgado, and told him to prepare. By noon, I walked into the inheritance meeting as though nothing had happened. The mahogany boardroom table gleamed under the chandelier, legal documents stacked like weapons. Melissa was already there, sitting too close to Jonathan, whispering in his ear. She looked up when I entered, and her face drained of color. Because she hadn't expected me to walk through that door. I smiled, slowly, coldly. Then I set the leather folder down and slid into my chair. Her hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. "Caroline," she stammered, "you look well." "Well enough," I said. Jonathan frowned, confused. "Mom, are you okay? You look pale." Melissa jabbed him under the table, but he didn't notice. The meeting began. Attorneys outlined assets, distributions, clauses. My name came up again and again. Beneficiary, trustee, guardian of Richard's legacy. Melissa's lips tightened with each mention. I didn't say a word. Not about the car. Not yet. but I watched. I watched her fingers twitch. I watched sweat bead at her temple. I watched her pale when the attorney confirmed, Caroline retains the primary estate until her passing. Jonathan inherits only under her discretion. Melissa swayed in her chair. Her face lost all color, and then, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, she fainted. The room erupted. Jonathan panicked, rushing to her side. Attorneys whispered, assistants fetched water. I simply leaned back, my hands folded calmly in my lap, because I knew the truth. The woman who tried to kill me couldn't even stomach the sight of me alive. That night, I sat in my study, staring at Richard's portrait above the fireplace. His stern eyes seemed to follow me, silently asking what I intended to do. Expose her? Destroy her? Forgive her? No. Forgiveness was for the innocent. Melissa had tried to erase me. Now I would erase her mask. And Jonathan? He would learn exactly what kind of wife he had chosen. The morning after the inheritance meeting, I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, replaying the moment Melissa fainted. Her face drained of blood when she saw me walk in alive. That wasn't the look of a guilty woman. It was the look of a would-be murderer watching her plan collapse. But fainting wouldn't save her. I pulled out the police report, anonymous of course, confirming that an explosive device had been found beneath my car. The officer had asked if I wanted to press charges. Not yet, I'd said. Timing was everything. Jonathan came to see me that evening. His eyes darted nervously as he stood in my doorway. "Mom," he said, voice unsteady, "Melissa hasn't been herself. She swore she was just overwhelmed yesterday." I looked at my son, my only boy, and felt the familiar ache. He had Richard's jaw, but none of his backbone. He wanted peace, even if it meant marrying poison. "Jonathan," I said, "has she told you what she did to my car?" He blinked. Confusion, then discomfort. He shook his head too quickly. "No, what are you talking about?" I slid the police report across the table. His hands shook as he read. When he looked up, his face was pale. This isn't true. Melissa would never what?" I snapped. "Never try to erase the only obstacle between you and the estate? You think I don't see it? You think your father didn't?" His lips parted, but no sound came. "Your wife tried to kill me," I said, my voice low, steady. "And you, Jonathan, are too blind or too weak to admit it." He slammed the report down. "No, she loves me. She just wants what's best for us." I laughed bitterly. "Then pray that her idea of best doesn't involve your life next." The following week, I called a family council, a meeting with Richard's siblings, my attorney, and Jonathan. I insisted Melissa attend. The boardroom was thick with tension. Melissa sat stiff, her pearl earrings glinting, lips pressed into a thin smile. Jonathan clung to her hand, though his fingers twitched nervously. I opened the meeting by sliding the police photographs across the polished table, the bomb, the wires, the dismantled device. Gasps circled the room. Melissa's composure cracked. "This is absurd," she stammered. "You can't possibly think I—" "Eddie," I said. The door opened, and the homeless man shuffled in, cleaner now, dressed in borrowed clothes, but his eyes still wary. He stood straighter when I nodded encouragement. "This is the man your daughter-in-law approached," I announced. He was supposed to keep quiet, but he didn't. All eyes turned to him. His voice shook, but his words were clear. "She paid me to look away, said I'd get cash and meals if I didn't warn her, but I couldn't let someone die." Melissa's face twisted. "Lies! He's lying!" But Jonathan's grip on her hand slipped. His eyes, wide and desperate, searched hers. "Melissa," he whispered, "tell me it's not true." Her silence was louder than any confession. The room erupted, Richard's siblings shouting, lawyers whispering, Jonathan sinking back in his chair as if the ground had opened beneath him. I stood, my voice cut through the noise like glass. "This woman tried to murder me for money, And you, Jonathan, let her whisper poison into your ear until you couldn't tell love from greed. Tears filled my son's eyes. For the first time, I saw shame there. Real shame. After that day, Melissa disappeared from our lives. Divorce papers followed quickly. Jonathan filed them, not me. Perhaps his pride couldn't stomach the headlines. Or perhaps the reality finally shattered the fantasy. She moved states away, dragging her venom with her. I heard rumors of debts, lawsuits, burned bridges, but she was no longer my problem. Jonathan came to me one evening, eyes hollow. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm sorry." I wanted to scream at him, to demand how he could have let it come so close. But instead, I just said, "You chose her once. Don't ever choose another like her again." Months passed. The inheritance remained intact, managed under my hand. Jonathan received what his father had allotted him, no more, no less. He worked, slowly rebuilding his name. As for Eddie, the homeless man who saved my life, I made sure he was never homeless again. I bought him a small apartment, stocked it with groceries, and gave him part-time work in Richard's old company. When he asked why, I told him the truth. Because you chose decency over greed, and that makes you richer than most people I know. Sometimes, late at night, I sit by the fire and think of Richard. I wonder if he'd be proud of how I stood my ground, or saddened that our son nearly became my undoing. But then I remember Melissa's face when I walked into that inheritance meeting alive. The shock, the horror, the collapse. And I know one thing. I survived. And I made sure the truth did too. Have you ever faced betrayal? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. Revenge is refusing silence forever.